Hi, I'm Nic McGinnis, and welcome to Writing a Philosophy Essay. Whether this is your first college writing assignment ever, or you're, just looking for some more guidance before writing something about this strange subject called philosophy, and I hope the content here will prove useful, practical, and hopefully will set you up for success and a good grade in one of my classes. So let's get started. I hope to talk about kind of three aspects here of writing an assignment. One, philosophy essays in terms of structure, arguments, and finding ideas. Then I'm going to kind of move to having a writing system. How do you start? Do you just start typing, or should you have a plan going in? I'm going to suggest you prepare to write, then write a first draft, then spend some time revising and finalizing before you submit. And finally, in the third section, I'll talk about making work actually happen, setting up SMART goals, using techniques in order to kind of prevent procrastination and working at the last minute. Let's get started. How do you structure and even write a philosophy essay? In a way, it's not different than any other essay at the college level. I'm hoping to see the normal elements of an essay: an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. The introduction should begin by providing context, giving an explanation, and most importantly, providing a thesis statement. So the context and explanation here in the introduction will provide all the information necessary for your audience to understand the thesis statement, which is kind of your claim about the topic you've chosen. And the tone you should strike is roughly you're explaining things, so you're writing as if your audience is someone who had never really heard of these specific ideas. So don't be afraid to take some extra time in that introduction to set the stage, to talk about the definitions, the concepts, the context, the people involved, the era they were living in, their assumptions, and defining terms. You can do this before the thesis. You can spell out your thesis and then go after and provide that explanation and context. But it's okay for your introduction to go beyond one paragraph, but to really be a section in and of itself, setting up your reader for understanding. Then the body text. This presents the ideas related to your thesis statement. I find it helpful before I start writing to kind of list my ideas in an outline, all the topics I want to hit. Generally speaking, I want to elaborate on my thesis and provide that argument. Why do I believe, or why am I making this statement? I can consider a counter-argument, right? What if someone objects? What would their objection be? And finally, in the rebuttal, what would they say? What would you say in answer to this counter-argument? So your body text will be kind of the bulk of the essay, where, the actual argument and the work happens after the introduction. The conclusion can be shorter than either the introduction or the body. Here you simply provide a recap and a summary, and maybe provide the reader with a sense of upshot. Why care about this? Why was it important? And it'll be often the closing is the last thing the reader will have in their mind. So that recap and upshot will help keep your thesis kind of fresh and interesting to them. You can also close with some further questions for research. This will also give the reader a sense of agency, because now they have questions themselves and they might be interested in answering them. So what I want to see is just this kind of threefold section here, where we have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Now, you think this is very conventional essay writing, but this is philosophy. How am I supposed to find a philosophical idea? So, yeah, philosophy can be sometimes intimidating or even just strange, but it's also a nice opportunity for self-expression, because you can absolutely present your opinion in a way that you can't in other classes. If you're taking a science class, you're expected to understand a theorem and apply it. Right? And you can apply it correctly or incorrectly, because there's a right answer and a wrong answer. But one of the nice things about a philosophy class, and whether we're talking about ethics, morality, metaphysics, you're absolutely expected to present your opinion. What's your take on this subject? You also have to take that extra step, however. You can't just express your opinion. You have to take that extra step and defend it. You have to present reasons why other people might also want to share your opinion. There's a reason that Plato went back and wrote dialogues featuring his teacher Socrates, because philosophy arose in the sense of this conversation in the public square, of people arguing with each other and trying to convince each other. That's the sport of it. So while you're expressing your opinion, take that extra step and think, what would I tell somebody who was like, I don't know? This might mean like, an airtight, logical argument. But it doesn't have to. you can also talk about your personal experiences and how those personal experiences validate your point of view. Look, this happens, therefore. Right? And if you feel kind of short of ideas, if you feel stuck, you are not sure where to go, instead of looking for an argument, maybe look for an emotion instead. Often, if a topic makes you react, you're just like, I don't know about this. That's a great starting point. Ask yourself, why did I react that way? And you can explore that. And in general, reading and researching will generate more ideas than just kind of solitary contemplation, just kind of staring at a wall going like, okay, I need an idea. I find that I get way more ideas when I'm reading lots of books, I'm reading articles, I'm taking notes because things are making kind of me react and make connections as I go. That's how you're going to find good ideas. Then you're going to need to organize them in the context of this essay with an introduction, body, and conclusion. An argument itself isn't that hard to write. In the body, you're going to elaborate on your argument. And an argument for some conclusion is going to do three things. First, it's going to address the informational needs of the audience. What that means is you should be asking yourself, what does my audience need to know to understand what I'm talking about? Right? What do they already know? And what do they need to know? And in general, as I suggested, you should be writing as if your audience is a clever person, an intelligent person, but who may have never heard of these specific thinkers, topics, or questions. So just lay it out for them. So after you've addressed the informational needs of your audience, the second thing you should do is motivate the conclusion. Here you're going to provide a reason or some evidence. This is the tricky part. What sorts of reasons or evidence can speak for the conclusion? If you're writing about something in ethics, you might talk about a personal experience. You might talk about a moral intuition or rule and show that this rule applies to this case. If you need evidence, you might have to find research, evaluate sources. I'm not going to get into finding, evaluating, and citing sources in this video, but if you have questions about that, absolutely send me an email. And finally, you should anticipate potential resistance by the reader and address these concerns. And this is where you're going to consider a counter-argument and provide a rebuttal. How do you write a really strong thesis, though? In general, I think, especially for philosophy, efficiency is key. It's key to strong writing and to a strong thesis statement. You want to express your one main idea in clear, direct writing. It's okay to have short sentences. It's all right not to have to use complex words and complex sentence structures, because the fact is complex, meandering writing will leave the reader confused. Might even leave them with the impression the argument is poor. So the attempt to sound complex can easily backfire. And I think this is true not just for your thesis statement, but in the writing as a whole. You're going to want to keep those ideas clear and keep your sentence structure relatively simple. So for your thesis, I find one thing that's useful is if you're writing especially the thesis, the key element of an essay is to write several different versions. You don't have to write several different versions of the entire essay. That's too much work, first of all. But for that key element of your thesis statement, sit down and write 3 or 4 versions. And one thing you'll notice that as you go through this process of writing the same idea 5 different ways, one of them is just going to be obviously better than the others. And there'll be no reason why. It could be the first. You'll be like, I did this for nothing. It could be the 5th. You're like, now I got it. But generally speaking, going over and expressing the same idea from a few different angles will result in one of them just being clearer. So try and rewrite. I find also that as students write, the problem sometimes is a lack of good ideas, finding that idea, but even more often is having too many ideas. That as you write, you're generating new ideas and you want to insert them in the very sentence you're writing at the moment. This is fine because it's good creative expression that is raw material for the final product. But one of the things you're going to need to do in the revision phase is notice when one sentence is trying to do 5 different things and they're just separating those things out. So you end up with short, clear, simple sentences that make convincing arguments. Speaking of revision, how do you go about that process? Let me talk to you a little bit about the 3-part writing system, which is something I do every time I teach a comm class. A writing system helps you get better grades. That's how I'm going to sell this idea to you. Why use it at all? The quality is going to increase if you go in with a plan. Most students, and I remember very distinctly being in college, I would just read the instructions, open a document, and just start typing. And I would usually do this when the deadline just kind of forced me to take action. I have to get up from my Nintendo and be like, all right, I'm going to write the essay. It's 11 o'clock. Better do this. I got about an hour. And, this leaves very little time for thought, for revision, and as a result, the writing itself is poor. And it creates this kind of stressful feedback loop, which you should be avoiding, right? You avoid the work until the last minute because it feels hard, until the pressure builds up and you feel you have to do it. But part of it feels so hard because we are waiting in the last minute. So you just keep avoiding the work. But approaching any complex project with a plan in advance, with a writing system, will help deal with that stress, help deal with procrastination, and really improve the quality of that outcome. So what kind of writing system do I recommend? Generally speaking, I'm going to say you should do 3 things. You should prepare to write, you should then write a first draft, and then you should spend time revising. And most students think that the second step is a really important step. Writing the essay is more important than prepping or revising. And I want to suggest to you that writing is actually the least important aspect. The writing should be easy compared to the really difficult job of prepping and revising. By the time you're ready to write, you've done enough prep work that you could just sit down and bang something out. You should do so quickly, resisting the urge to edit as you go. And then you revise for clarity, then you redraft. That's going to be the hard part. And, no matter the topic, even if it's a philosophy essay, history, any essay, right, preparation is key, right? Read the assignment instructions carefully, obviously. Note any requirements in terms of length, style, content, structure. And then choose a topic. I provide lists of potential topics, or you can create your own. And find something you feel invested in, something that, again, I suggested earlier, if you have an emotion, if you have a reaction to a topic, well, that's probably going to be generative in the sense that you're going to want to write about it. You're going to feel invested, you're going to feel motivated. And then review the course material relevant to the topic you've chosen. And while doing this quick review, take notes on anything unclear, anything that makes you stop and think, anything that you feel might require further research. And this will make you create a list of ideas, questions, examples, subtopics. So do that search, but set a time limit and keep good track of everything you've looked at. Once you've done all that, and you're probably already starting to have an inkling, right? Find your thesis. And once you have a thesis, let that be the guide to organizing all the ideas and notes you've taken so far. And then start writing a little bullet point or a flow diagram with arrows where you organize your ideas using that basic introduction, body, conclusion outline. You have your thesis statement, and then you have your body, and you're going to go, here's an idea I had, here's an example, right? Here's a counter argument, right? As you're taking notes, right? So you have all this material, and then you're creating this kind of outline. It could be bullet points, it could be a flow, like a flow chart with arrows, it could be anything you like. But if you start giving labels to sections, you'll find that the actual writing flows much easier in that step 2 and then actually writing. Because this basic outline, just bullet points, will serve as your essay outline that will then guide your writing and make the writing feel fluid, easy, not panicky or frustrated. Right, so by the time you are writing your first draft, that first draft is simply an elaboration on the outline you've already created during your prep. And, it's okay as you write, that it strays a little bit. That absolutely happens when writing. New ideas pop in because the act of writing is this kind of mysterious creative thing. Ideas pop in out of nowhere and your fingers are going. It's okay if your ideas stray a little bit. You can rein it in later in the revision. Right? So keep your ideas. But later on, ask yourself, should I include this here specifically? And this is going to happen, as I said earlier, sometimes in the very sentence you're writing, you're going to start inserting new ideas between a couple commas, right? So just watch out for that and separate those things out. Generally speaking, right, every sentence should deal with one thing. And every paragraph, and I love paragraphs, you could never have too many paragraphs. Every paragraph should express one complex idea. And if you have more than an idea or two in a paragraph, think about editing that differently. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself by talking about editing. because you should actually be writing fairly quickly and resist the urge to edit as you write. You should just be consulting your outline and banging it out, right? And if you're stuck, take a break. Stop, go for a walk, go touch grass, as they say on the internet, and come back. And another thing I find helpful if you're stuck is to just read what you have out loud, as if you're explaining your thesis and topic to someone. And that should help you kind of get things going again. Right? When in doubt, just let that structure guide you, right? Introduction provides context, body provides an argument, conclusion summarizes and gives you an upshot. So if you're ever lost, you know what to do. Now, the hardest thing for me is to revise. I write pretty good first drafts by now. Like, I've been writing for a long time, and I could just type something out and it'll sound pretty good on the first draft. So I think, it's good enough. I'm done. It's good enough. Probably, if you're writing essays in college and you want that A, revision is going to be the difference between passing the class and getting that A or A+. You're going to want to spend more time revising your work than writing it. And trust me on this, you don't want to. You're listening to this video thinking there is no way after I finish writing this essay, I'm going to revise it. I'm done. It's good enough. Maybe it is. But on the other hand, right, and I've been grading these for a long time, it's the little things, the little stylistic things that really can distinguish you from the other students in the class. If you take the time to revise, you will rise above. You're going to want to revise to look for opportunities to shorten sentences, clarify paragraphs, reorganize ideas. Are your paragraphs expressing that one idea? Are they sequenced in a clear, logical order? Are you doing too much in one sentence or paragraph? What I used to do when I was an undergrad, I transferred over to like an honors philosophy degree, and things started getting actually competitive at that point. You had to really be thoughtful to get a good grade. And for some essays that I was particularly stressed about, I would start well in advance. I'd write an entire first draft and then open a blank document and rewrite that draft from scratch. I would use that first draft as a guide, but I would just start over in a blank document. And that second version was always the A version. That was the A+ version right there. If you have time, you have a basic bullet point outline, you have a quick first draft, that first draft becomes your new outline, and then you start in a new document. That second draft, you'd be amazed how much better it is. If you have time, try and do that. And this is only this for most of my classes. If you're watching this video, your essays only need to be a few pages. And so this redraft, really, you should be able to do it, and you're going to really improve your writing. And make sure to proofread carefully, right? Don't let a little typo sink your grade. Use a spell check. You can use an online grammar tool. And lastly, when you're revising, try to remember that the audience is not you. Sometimes people write as if they're writing reminders to themselves about the thoughts they had. But the audience is someone else who has to read your words and try to decode them as best as they can to get at what you were trying to say. This is where it's really useful to have someone to talk to in your household. It could be a friend, a family member, and just say, hey, I'm writing this essay. Can I read this paragraph out to you? Let me know if it makes sense to you. If you can, print it out or, read it on your phone instead of your screen, and just read it out to yourself and pretend you're someone else seeing it for the first time. How do you react? Is there anything clear or unclear? Any memorable passages? Things that feel confusing? Highlight those and go back and revise them. My general advice to you is when you're revising, try not to modify sentences. Just rewrite them from scratch. They're going to be so much better. I realize this is time intensive. You may just need to edit a sentence lightly. That's probably fine too. But for best results, highlight those problematic sentences, those unclear passages, and just rewrite them from scratch. The quality is going to be so much better. But how can I make all this work happen? Great question, thanks. Making work happen is a function of really two things. One is having realistic goals, and the second is having a realistic workflow. So let's talk about goals first. Goals should never be vague, right? If it's 10 o'clock at night It's a Sunday, it's due, your goal is like, I should write a paper. You're setting yourself up for, stress, frustration, procrastination, and probably a poor grade. To actually be really productive, a goal should be, as they say in the literature, a SMART goal. Great acronym. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So rather than write a paper, which is a vague, bad goal, a SMART goal would be like, I need to spend 20 minutes doing nothing but research. Set a timer, no distractions, no social media, no phone, everything's on mute, no other open tabs. I'm only allowed for 20 minutes to do that. Another example would be write 100 words for my introduction. That's a smarter goal because it's specific. I have a word count, right? And it's specific in a way that makes it be measurable. I know exactly what 100 words means. It's achievable. I can write 100 words in 20 minutes. It's relevant to my end, to like my goal of writing a paper, and it's going to be time bound. I'm going to try to say, okay, I'm going to do it in the next half hour, right? Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. In this way, you take the complex, vague task, writing a paper, and you break it down into a series of smaller tasks, which are specific and measurable, so you know you're making progress. So setting SMART criteria and breaking down your complex task into a series of small measurable increments will help make work happen. Typically, when I'm really stuck, and I basically wrote my entire dissertation using this. The only reason I have a PhD is because I bumped into these techniques quite by accident, and I was so stuck I thought I had nothing to lose. It was going to be like drop out or do this. I mean, am I exaggerating a little bit? Maybe, but I was really stuck. And I broke it down. I had SMART goals, and I had something called the Pomodoro technique. Pomodoro is Italian for tomato because the person that came up with it was using a little kitchen timer in the shape of a tomato. So you decide on your SMART goal, and then you set a timer, anywhere from 15 to 25 minutes, whatever your attention span allows you to do. And then for that 15 minutes, you do nothing but work on the goal. No distractions allowed. No multitasking. Close everything that's irrelevant. Mute your phone. Don't check your Facebook. Because, I mean, if your workflow is like mine, but I'm not specifically Pomodoroing, I'll do a little bit of stuff. I'll get distracted. I'll open Facebook, or I'll get a notification. I'm like, oh, yeah, hey, this person. No. If you're Pomodoroing, 15 minutes, no distractions. You stop when the timer rings. You can add a little check, and then you take a 5-minute break. Do whatever you like in that 5 minutes. Go look outside, look through your window, take a walk, check your notifications. At the 5-minute break is over, do another Pomodoro. Right? After the 4th check, you can take that longer break. Take your half hour, take your 45 minutes, go have lunch, and then start again. And there are smartphone apps that track your Pomodoro checks for you. They'll set the timer, they'll do everything for you. So again, this is a workflow technique. It's a great anti-procrastination tool. It really helps you fall into that kind of hyper-productive mode. The problem is, it takes a lot of executive function juice to even set this up at all. But if you're able to do that, if you're able to just set up the SMART goal in the Pomodoro, you're going to take this complex project. Oh my gosh, I got a 12-page paper for business comp to write. I can't imagine writing that much. Break it down to small, measurable increments. For one of my comm classes, I actually have an entire 2-hour class where all I do is I go student by student. I say, give me a SMART goal right now. Tell me what it is. I'm going to set up your timer. I'm going to come back in 15 minutes. I'm going to see how much you've done. And by the end of that 2-hour class, students have made tremendous progress on their final reports, more than they thought they'd be able to do in 2 hours. So if you have that self-discipline, right, if you have that capacity, these techniques will absolutely help. So, because if you're stuck, as I often am stuck, right, procrastination isn't some moral character failing you have. Procrastination is caused by all kinds of things. It can be caused by perfectionism, right? And sometimes not doing anything feels easier than not doing it well enough because it's not good enough. And then only panic enables me to be motivated more than my fear of being not good enough. But in fact, I think not good enough is great. It's certainly better than not at all. Whether it's writing an essay or cleaning up your house. I discovered this as an adult. I realized that if I just do like a good enough job, I'll do the job rather than like things accumulate. Like I could, if I'm vacuuming the house, I'm going to do like the 80% job of vacuuming the house is what I call it. I'm not going to move all the furniture. I'm not going to get behind every corner. I'm not going to get every cobweb out of the ceiling. I'm going to just do like 80% of the job of doing the easy, visible spots that I can do. Because one thing I've noticed is that getting that 100% job is the last 20% that takes up most of the time. Getting it perfect, my half-hour vacuuming job turns into like a 2-hour debacle, and it's frustrating. So I just end up going, I'm not going to vacuum. But when I realized I'm the adult here, I can do that 80% job. You know what 80% is? 80% is an A-. I can do that A- vacuuming job in half an hour. And you know what? That is, in fact, good enough. Don't let perfectionism become procrastination because of your fear of not being good enough. Whoever told you that, ignore them. Listen to me instead. I have a PhD. Good enough is good enough. And using SMART goals and Pomodoros can break down those complex tasks that feel too daunting. Right? Because any small step forward is a useful step. Right? You don't need ideal conditions to get to work. Again, this is one of my problems with procrastination. I'm like, there's no point in working on this. I only have about 45 minutes before the kids get home. I might as well do nothing. I might as well just check Facebook or whatever. 45 minutes isn't time. What I really need is like 5 hours when I'm feeling good, I don't have a headache, the weather's nice, and I could just sit with my laptop and do a bunch of grading. Otherwise, I can't do anything. This is often my problem. I don't have ideal conditions for work. But if I put myself in the Pomodoro mindset, I'm like, I got 45 minutes. That is 3 decent Pomodoros. I can do 3 measurable goals in 45 minutes. So shifting that mindset away from ideal conditions for perfect work towards, here's a measurable increment of work towards a goal. And if your problem with procrastination is, sources of fun, oh, I got video games, I got social media, I got my friends, one way we could set it up is, well, these are post-work rewards. If I do 5 Pomodoros, I get to go do the thing, right? And sometimes I have to do this too. Ask for help. Ask a friend or a family member to just kind of supervise. Be like, look, make sure I don't get to do the thing until I, meet my goal or whatever. Just, enlist someone to help you out. So those are my suggestions for writing philosophy essays, right? In summary, your philosophy essay should have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. You can generate ideas through research, through the process of writing, and just kind of letting your emotions guide you. What are you reacting to, and why are you having thoughts and feelings about these philosophical ideas? When you're writing, you prepare, you write, and then you spend a lot more time than you think on revision. And if you don't know how to get started, set SMART goals and use a technique such as the Pomodoro technique to make sure that you're using your time efficiently. And this way, you'll actually have more time to do the things you actually like, which I'm guessing aren't writing philosophy essays. All right, thanks so much for watching, and if you have any questions, as always, send me an email or come talk to me in class. This is Nic McGinnis, signing out.